Rain pounded against the windshield that October night. Nobody knew it then, but everything was about to change forever. Lily Chen had always been the quiet one. While her older sister, Rachel, commanded every room she walked into, Lily preferred the corner seat at the library where she worked. Rachel was the successful one, the beautiful one, the one their parents bragged about at family gatherings. She had the perfect career as an architect, the perfect apartment downtown, and the perfect fiancé. Dr. David Park was everything a family could want. A neurosurgeon at the city's top hospital, handsome, wealthy, and completely devoted to Rachel. They'd been together for 3 years, and 2 months ago, he'd proposed at a beach resort with a ring that probably cost more than Lily's annual salary. The wedding was set for December, just 8 weeks away. Invitations had been sent. The venue was booked. Rachel's custom wedding dress hung in her closet, wrapped in silk. The engagement party had been everything Rachel wanted. Their parents had rented out an entire restaurant, inviting over 200 guests. Lily had stood in the background most of the evening, watching Rachel glow in her champagne-colored dress, watching David look at her sister like she was the only person in the world. Nobody noticed when Lily slipped out early, taking a taxi home to her small apartment and her waiting books. She was already in bed when her phone rang at 11:30. Her mother's voice was barely recognizable, broken and screaming. There had been an accident. Rachel's car had gone off the road on the mountain pass. She needed to get to the hospital now. The next few hours blurred together like a nightmare. The hospital waiting room with its harsh fluorescent lights, her father pacing, her mother sobbing, David still in his suit from the party, his face completely blank like someone had erased all expression from it. Doctors coming in and out with updates that never felt like real updates. Rachel had survived the crash, but she hadn't woken up. The doctors used words like traumatic brain injury, induced coma, uncertain prognosis. They couldn't say when she might wake up. They couldn't promise that she would. David practically lived at the hospital after that. He'd take his breaks from surgery to sit by Rachel's bed, holding her hand, talking to her about their future together. Lily visited every few days, reading to her sister from the romance novels Rachel secretly loved but pretended to think were silly. She'd tell Rachel about the library, about the new books that came in, about anything and everything, hoping that somewhere in there Rachel could hear her. Weeks passed. Rachel's condition stabilized but didn't improve. She breathed on her own. Her vitals were steady, but she remained trapped in that space between sleep and waking. The doctors started using new words. Long-term care, extended recovery, permanent damage. Nobody wanted to say the other words, the scary ones, but they hung in the air anyway. Meanwhile, practical problems started piling up. Rachel's medical bills were massive, even with insurance. She'd been the primary income in the family business, a design firm she'd started with their father. Without her, clients were canceling contracts. The firm was struggling. And then there was the wedding. The Whitmore family, David's parents, had already paid for half the expenses. They'd planned a merger between their medical group and the Chen family's investments. Business deals had been signed based on this marriage happening. 1 month after the accident, Lily's parents called her to their house. She thought they wanted to discuss Rachel's care, maybe talk about taking turns at the hospital. Instead, she walked into the living room to find both sets of parents there and David too, sitting stiffly on the couch, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Her father didn't waste time with pleasantries. The family was in crisis, he said. Rachel's medical expenses were draining their savings. The business was failing without her. The Whitmore family had invested heavily in this union, in the merger it represented. Breaking everything off now would destroy both families financially. Then came the part that made Lily's blood run cold. They wanted her to marry David instead. At first, she thought she'd misheard. That was impossible. That was insane. But her father kept talking, laying out the logic like he was presenting a business proposal. It would be temporary just until Rachel woke up. The wedding was already planned, the guests already invited. They could say Rachel was too ill to attend, that they'd decided to proceed quietly for her sake. Lily could step in, fulfill the obligation, save both families from ruin. Lily's voice finally came back to her. She said no. Absolutely not. She wouldn't marry her sister's fiancé. It was wrong on every level. She looked at David, expecting him to back her up, to shut this down immediately. But David just sat there, his jaw tight, staring at the floor. David's mother spoke up then. Her son was devastated, she said. But he was also a practical man. He understood duty. He understood that sometimes we do things for family, for the greater good. Rachel would want the family protected. Rachel would want her medical care secured. And with the Whitmore family's resources fully committed through marriage, Rachel would have access to the best specialists, the best treatments, the best chance of recovery. They were using Rachel as leverage. Lily felt sick. Her mother started crying, begging. They'd lose everything, she said. The house, the business, everything their family had built. And without the Whitmore connections, how would they pay for Rachel's long-term care? What would happen to her sister? The room spun around Lily. This couldn't be happening. This was medieval, barbaric, impossible. But everyone was looking at her, waiting for her answer. Her father's face was stern. Her mother was sobbing. David still wouldn't meet her eyes. She said no again. She stood up to leave. Her father's voice stopped her at the door, cold and hard. If she walked away now, she was walking away from her family, from her sister. She'd be choosing her own comfort over Rachel's survival. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She thought about Rachel in that hospital bed, helpless, unaware of any of this. She thought about the medical bills piling up, about her parents losing their home. She thought about her quiet life, her library job, her small apartment. Nothing spectacular, but it was hers. And they were asking her to give it all up, to become someone else, to step into Rachel's life like putting on someone else's clothes. But mostly she thought about her sister. Beautiful, confident Rachel, who'd always been there for her despite the differences between them. Rachel, who might never wake up without the best medical care money could buy. 3 days later, Lily called her parents. Her voice was steady even though her hands shook. She'd do it. She'd marry David. But only until Rachel woke up, and only if they promised to do everything possible for her sister's recovery. Her mother cried with relief. Her father said she was doing the honorable thing. Nobody asked her how she felt about it. 2 weeks later, Lily stood in a simple cream dress in a hospital chapel. David slipped a ring onto her finger, his hand trembling. Neither of them smiled. There were no guests, no celebration, no joy. 3 floors above them, Rachel lay sleeping, unaware that her younger sister had just married the man who was supposed to be her husband. The minister pronounced them married. David's lips barely brushed Lily's cheek. And just like that, Lily's life as she knew it ended, replaced by something she never asked for and certainly never wanted. Moving into David's penthouse felt like stepping into someone else's dream. Everything was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, with a view of the city that took Lily's breath away. Rachel had spent countless hours here, had probably picked out half the furniture. Her presence was everywhere, in the photos on the shelves, in the coffee mug that still sat by the sink, in the way David's eyes lingered on empty spaces where she used to be. The first night, David showed Lily to his home office. He'd already moved his desk and files into the bedroom. This would be her room now, he said. His voice was flat, businesslike. She had her own bathroom, her own space. He'd stay in the master bedroom. They'd share the kitchen and living areas, but otherwise they'd live separate lives. Lily nodded, unable to find words. What do you say to the man you just married who clearly wishes you were someone else? That first week was the longest of Lily's life. She'd wake up early, make coffee in the unfamiliar kitchen, and listen to David moving around in his room, getting ready for the hospital. Sometimes they'd pass each other in the hallway. He'd nod. She'd nod back. Then he'd be gone, sometimes for the entire day and night. She kept working at the library, grateful for the routine, for something that still felt like her real life. Her co-workers knew she'd gotten married suddenly, quietly because of a family situation. They didn't know the whole truth. Nobody did. When they asked about her new husband, she'd smile and change the subject. The penthouse felt like a hotel. Lily was afraid to touch anything, to make it feel like home. She'd cook simple dinners for herself, eat alone at the massive dining table, then retreat to her room to read. Sometimes she wouldn't see David for 2 or 3 days straight. He was sleeping at the hospital, she assumed, in the doctor's lounge. Avoiding her. Avoiding this whole situation. She visited Rachel 3 times a week, always when she knew David wouldn't be there. They'd worked out an unspoken schedule without ever discussing it. Lily would read to her sister, tell her about work, about the books. She was reading about everything except the one thing she could never tell her. She'd hold Rachel's hand and fight back tears, whispering apologies her sister couldn't hear. 3 weeks into the marriage, Lily noticed David had lost weight. His suits hung looser on his frame. She started seeing the takeout containers piling up in his room's trash can when she walked past. The man was surviving on coffee and whatever the hospital cafeteria offered. Something in Lily couldn't ignore it. Despite everything, despite the awkwardness and the wrongness of this situation, she couldn't watch him destroy himself. So one evening, she made extra dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and a simple salad. She left it outside his study door with a note that said, "You need to eat." The next morning, she found the empty containers washed and placed in the dishwasher. No note, no acknowledgement. But 2 nights later, when she left another meal, she heard him call out a quiet thank you from behind the closed door. It became their routine. She'd cook, leave the food outside his door, and he'd eat it. Sometimes she'd find a text message the next day. The chicken was good, or thanks for dinner. Small words, but they felt like progress. Like maybe they could find some way to exist in this strange space between strangers and spouses. Then one morning, she found David in the kitchen making coffee. It was 6 a.m. and she'd gotten up early to prepare for a big inventory day at the library. They both froze, caught off guard by the unexpected encounter. "I made enough for 2, he said finally, gesturing to the coffee pot. "Thanks," Lily managed. They stood there in awkward silence, both nursing their cups. David's hair was messy, like he'd actually slept in his own bed for once. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't hide. "How's Rachel?" he asked suddenly. "The same, still stable. I read her that mystery novel she was excited about before." Lily trailed off. David nodded. "I talked to her about surgeries, probably boring her to death." He winced at his own choice of words. "Sorry, bad joke." "It's okay," another silence. But this one felt less heavy somehow. "Look," David said, setting down his mug. "This is weird. All of this. But we're stuck in it together, and I'm sorry I've been avoiding you." "It's not fair." Lily felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. "I get it. I'm not exactly who you wanted to come home to." "It's not that." He ran a hand through his hair. "You're not the problem, Lily. This whole situation is the problem. Our family's pushing us into this, using Rachel's condition as leverage. I'm angry about it, but I've been taking it out on you by disappearing. That's not right." It was the most he'd said to her since the wedding. Lily felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back. "We're both stuck," she said quietly. "Might as well not make it harder than it has to be." David managed a small smile, the first real one she'd seen from him. "Deal." After that morning, things shifted. David started coming home more. Not every night, but more often. They'd have coffee together in the mornings. Brief conversations about nothing important. The weather. A book Lily was reading. A difficult surgery David had performed. Small talk between 2 people learning how to share a space. Lily noticed little things about him she'd never paid attention to before. How he always organized his keys in the same spot by the door. How he hummed off key when he thought he was alone. How he'd stop and really listen when she talked, giving her his full attention in a way most people didn't. David started noticing things about her too. He'd bring home books he thought she'd like from the hospital's gift shop. He'd remember that she liked her coffee with cream and 2 sugars, and would make it for her without asking. Once he came home with Thai food after she'd mentioned missing the place near her old apartment. 2 months after their wedding, they started having dinner together. Not every night, but enough that it became normal. They'd sit at that big dining table and actually talk. David told her about his work, about the stress of holding lives in his hands every day. Lily told him about the library patrons, about the elderly man who came in every Tuesday to read poetry, about the teenager she was helping apply to college. One evening, David asked her about her dreams. Nobody had ever asked her that before. Everyone always assumed Lily was content in her quiet life, but David saw through it somehow. "I wanted to write," she admitted, feeling shy. "Books, maybe, stories, but it seemed too impractical, too risky." "Rachel never mentioned that," David said, looking genuinely interested. "Rachel didn't know." "I never told anyone." David leaned forward. "Why not?" Lily shrugged. "My sister was the brave one, the one who chased big dreams. I was just supposed to be the sensible one." "Maybe you're braver than you think." David said quietly. You married a stranger to save your family. That's pretty brave, the words hung in the air between them. Lily felt her cheeks warm. They started going to the hospital together to visit Rachel. It felt right somehow, facing it as a team instead of taking turns avoiding each other. They'd sit on either side of Rachel's bed, talking to her, updating her on their lives, carefully avoiding any mention of their living arrangement. Lily's mother called one afternoon asking pointed questions. Was the marriage real yet? Were they actually living as husband and wife? She hinted that maybe Lily should try harder, be more accommodating, ensure David stayed committed to the arrangement. Lily felt sick listening to it. When David came home that evening, she was curled up on the couch, still upset. He sat down next to her, not touching but close. What's wrong? She told him about the call. His jaw tightened with anger. They have no right, he said firmly. What happens between us is our choice. Not theirs. Not anyone's. This marriage was forced on both of us, but that doesn't mean we owe them anything beyond what we agreed to. Lily looked at him surprised. You'd stand up to them? I already let them push me into this once, David said. I'm not letting them push you around anymore. We make our own rules, okay? Something warm spread through Lily's chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't feel completely alone in it. Okay, she whispered. David reached over and squeezed her hand briefly before standing up. The touch was quick, casual, but Lily felt it long after he'd walked away. That night, lying in her room that was starting to feel less like a guest room and more like her space, Lily realized something terrifying. She was getting comfortable here. She was starting to look forward to morning coffee with David, to their dinners, to the way he made her laugh with his dry observations about hospital politics. She was starting to forget this was all temporary, and that Lily knew was dangerous. Because sooner or later, Rachel would wake up. Rachel would want her life back. And Lily would have to disappear again, back into the shadows where she'd always belonged. But for now, in the quiet darkness of the penthouse with the city lights twinkling outside her window, she let herself pretend. Just for a little while, she let herself imagine this life might actually be hers. Winter came early that year. Lily woke up one December morning with her throat on fire and her head pounding. She tried to get up for work, but the room spun around her. Still, she pushed herself out of bed, took some medicine, and got dressed. She couldn't miss the holiday book fair at the library. They needed her. She made it as far as the hallway before her legs gave out. The next thing she knew, David was kneeling beside her, still in his scrubs from the night shift, his face tight with concern. He pressed his hand against her forehead and swore under his breath, You're burning up. Why didn't you say something? I'm fine, Lily tried to say, but her voice came out as a croak. You're not fine. Come on. He lifted her easily, carrying her back to her room. Any other time, Lily would have been mortified. But she felt too awful to care. He laid her down gently, pulled the covers up, and disappeared. She heard him making phone calls, his doctor voice crisp and authoritative. He was calling in sick to the hospital. For her, the next 2 days blurred together. Lily drifted in and out of feverish sleep. David was always there when she woke up, checking her temperature, making her drink water, bringing her soup. At night, she could hear him sleeping on the couch outside her room, wanting to be close in case she needed anything. On the second night, her fever spiked. She was caught in a nightmare about Rachel, about the wedding, about everything. She woke up crying, and David was sitting on the edge of her bed holding her hand. I'm sorry, she whispered, and she wasn't even sure what she was apologizing for anymore. I'm sorry I'm not her. I'm sorry you got stuck with me instead. I'm sorry I'm not good enough. The fever had stripped away all her filters. The words just poured out, everything she'd been holding inside for months. David's face did something complicated. He squeezed her hand tighter. Lily, stop. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. But you loved her. You wanted to marry her. And instead you got me. Boring Lily who works at a library and never does anything exciting. You're not boring, David said firmly. And what happened to Rachel? What our families did to both of us, none of that is on you. You didn't ask for this any more than I did. Lily's eyes filled with tears again. I hate that she's lying there and we're here and I'm starting to... She stopped, horrified at what she'd almost said. Starting to what? But Lily turned her face away, pretending to fall back asleep. She'd already said too much. When she finally recovered a week later, Something had changed between them. David had seen her at her most vulnerable, had taken care of her with a gentleness that made her heart ache. And she'd almost confessed feelings she had no right to have. They fell back into their routine, but it was different now. David came home every evening. They cooked dinner together now instead of Lily cooking alone. He'd chop vegetables while she stirred the pasta, and they'd move around the kitchen like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. They'd talk about their days, laugh at stupid jokes, argue playfully about which movie to watch. One evening, David's colleague from the hospital stopped by to drop off some files. He took one look at them cooking together, at the way they moved in sync, at the easy comfort between them, and smiled. "You two look happy," he said. "Really happy. It's good to see you like this, David. After everything with Rachel, we were all worried about you. But you and Lily, you just fit, you know." After he left, Lily and David stood in the kitchen, not looking at each other. The word hung in the air between them. Happy. Were they happy? The thought was terrifying because yes, Lily realized she was happy. Happier than she'd been in years. And that was so completely wrong. "We should visit Rachel," she said abruptly, needing to remember why this couldn't be real. They went to the hospital that night. Rachel looked the same as always, peaceful and still, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. David took his usual chair on one side, Lily on the other. But this time, when Lily looked across the bed at David, she saw something in his eyes that made her stomach flip. He was looking at her, not at Rachel, and the expression on his face was soft, warm, fond. She looked away quickly, her heart racing. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about that look, about the way her heart had jumped, about how she'd started thinking of David as her husband, not just the man she was temporarily married to, about how she'd catch herself imagining a future with him, before remembering there couldn't be one. She started pulling away. She had to. This was getting too dangerous, too real. She started eating dinner in her room again, claiming she had work to catch up on. She'd leave for the library early and come home late. She went back to visiting Rachel alone, avoiding the times when David would be there. David noticed, of course. He started leaving notes. "Did I do something wrong? Talk to me. I miss our dinners." That last one almost broke her. One evening, he was waiting when she came home late from the library. He stood up from the couch, his face serious. "We need to talk." "I'm tired," Lily said, trying to move past him. He gently caught her arm. Please, she couldn't run anymore. They sat down and the silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "Why are you avoiding me?" David asked finally. "I'm not. Don't lie. We both know you are." "Did I do something? Say something? Because if I made you uncomfortable when you were sick, I'm sorry. I was just trying to help." "It's not that." Lily stared at her hands. "You were wonderful. That's the problem." "I don't understand." "David." She took a deep breath. This was supposed to be temporary. Fake. A business arrangement until Rachel wakes up. But somewhere along the way it stopped feeling fake. At least for me. "And that's not okay." "That's not fair to Rachel." The words hung in the air. Lily couldn't believe she'd said them out loud. David was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "What if it stopped feeling fake for me too?" Lily's head snapped up. David was looking at her with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "What? I didn't want this marriage. You know that. I was angry and grieving and felt trapped. But then you were just you. You were kind and funny and strong. You didn't try to be Rachel. You were just Lily. And somewhere in these last few months He stopped, running his hand through his hair. "I started to care about you a lot. More than I should." "Don't," Lily whispered. "Please don't say it." "Why not?" "It's true. Because Rachel is upstairs in that hospital. Your fiancé, my sister, the woman you're supposed to love. She's lying there helpless while we're here having feelings for each other. How is that okay? How is any of this okay?" "I don't know," David admitted. "I feel guilty every single day. Every time I laugh with you. Every time I look forward to coming home to you, I feel like I'm betraying her. But I can't help it, Lily. I can't help what I feel." Lily stood up abruptly. "This is wrong. We can't do this. What are we doing? We haven't done anything wrong, haven't we? We're falling for each other while my sister is in a coma. That's not just wrong, David, that's horrible. We're horrible people." "We're human," David said, standing too. "We're two people thrown into an impossible situation. trying to survive it. That doesn't make us horrible. I can't do this, Lily was crying now. I can't be the person who steals her sister's life. I can't look at Rachel knowing I have feelings for you. I just can't. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need to go back to how it was. Separate lives, separate schedules. We live like roommates until Rachel wakes up and then I'll move out and this will all be over. Is that what you really want? No, Lily thought. It's the last thing I want. But she nodded anyway. Fine, David said, his voice cold now. If that's what you want, fine. He walked to his room and closed the door. Lily stood in the living room, tears streaming down her face, feeling like she'd just torn her own heart out. But it was the right thing to do. It had to be. That night, lying alone in her room, Lily heard David leave. She heard the front door close, heard the elevator ding as he left, going to stay at the hospital probably, running away from her the same way she was running from him. She curled up under her blankets and cried. She cried for Rachel trapped in sleep. She cried for David forced into a marriage he never wanted. But mostly she cried for herself, for falling in love with a man who could never truly be hers. No matter what a piece of paper said. The next morning, her phone rang at 6 a.m. It was the hospital. Rachel's condition had changed. Lily's hands shook as she drove to the hospital. David had already texted her that he was there. The message was brief, professional, like they were strangers again. Rachel's neurologist wants to see us both. Her mind raced through possibilities. Maybe Rachel was waking up. Maybe this nightmare was finally ending, and mixed with her desperate hope for her sister was a terrible, shameful feeling she couldn't name. What would happen to her and David if Rachel woke up? She pushed the thought away, disgusted with herself. Rachel's recovery was all that mattered. Everything else was secondary. David was waiting outside Rachel's room, still in yesterday's clothes. He looked exhausted, hollow. When he saw Lily, something flickered in his eyes before he looked away. The neurologist didn't waste time with small talk. Rachel's brain activity had changed significantly overnight. Her scans showed patterns they hadn't seen before. But it wasn't the miracle they'd hoped for. The changes indicated deterioration, not improvement. Rachel's brain was showing signs of further damage. The words felt like a physical blow. Lily grabbed the wall to steady herself. What does that mean? David's voice was clinical, detached, his doctor mode fully engaged. The neurologist's expression was gentle but honest. Rachel's prognosis had shifted. Without improvement in the next 6 months, they needed to consider the possibility that she might never wake up. And even if she did, the level of damage suggested severe impairment. They should start thinking about long-term care facilities, about what Rachel would want if she couldn't recover. Nobody said the words, pull the plug, but they hung in the air anyway. Lily couldn't breathe. She walked out of the room, down the hallway to the hospital chapel she'd discovered months ago. She sat in the back row and let herself fall apart. David found her there an hour later. He sat down next to her, not saying anything. They stayed like that in silence. Two people drowning in grief and guilt, sitting side by side but feeling miles apart. I'm going to find the best specialist in the world, David said finally. Call in every favor I have. There has to be something we can do. Okay, Lily whispered. I'll stay at the hospital full time. Monitor everything myself. Okay. You don't have to come here anymore if it's too hard. I'll send you updates. Lily turned to look at him. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He was shutting down, shutting her out. Is that what you want? For me to stay away? I want, David's voice cracked. I want my fiancé to wake up. I want to go back to before any of this happened. I want to not feel like a terrible person every time I look at you. The words cut deep even though Lily understood them. She felt the same way. I should go, she said quietly. Lily, wait. David caught her hand. I didn't mean it like that. I don't know how to do this anymore. How to be around you and not want things I have no right to want. Then maybe we shouldn't be around each other. She pulled her hand away and left. Behind her, she heard David make a sound like something breaking. The next weeks were the hardest of Lily's life. She threw herself into work, taking extra shifts at the library, volunteering for every project. She moved back to her old apartment, unable to stay in the penthouse that had started to feel like home. Her parents were furious, demanding she go back, maintain the arrangement. She refused. The marriage was still legally intact, the family's business interests protected. That was all they'd really wanted anyway. She visited Rachel once a week, always calling ahead to make sure David wouldn't be there. Her sister looked smaller somehow, more fragile. Lily would hold her hand and talk to her about nothing, carefully avoiding any mention of David, of feelings, of the mess they'd all become. One evening, David's younger brother showed up at the library just before closing. Kyle was a lawyer, sharp and observant. He found Lily in the rare books section, carefully cataloging a new donation. "He's destroying himself," Kyle said without preamble. Lily didn't need to ask who. "How is she?" "Rachel?" "The same, David. That's why I'm here. He's working 20-hour days, not eating, not sleeping. He's pushing everyone away. My parents are worried." "I'm worried. I can't help him," Lily said quietly. "Me being around just makes everything worse." "Does it?" "Because from what I saw when I visited before, you two were good together. Really good. He was happy for the first time since the accident. It was wrong, all of it." Kyle leaned against the bookshelf. "Can I tell you something? Rachel talked to me a lot before the accident. About David, about their relationship. She loved him. But she also told me she worried they wanted different things. She wanted the big career, the spotlight. David wanted something quieter, more real. They were trying to make it work, but there were cracks." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're punishing yourself for having feelings that might have developed anyway. Because life is complicated and messy, and sometimes we don't get to choose who we love or when. She's my sister. I know. And you love her. That's why this is so hard." Kyle straightened up. "I'm not saying what you should do. I just thought you should know that David's not doing well, and whether you want to admit it or not, he needs you." After he left, Lily sat in the empty library, surrounded by books and silence. She thought about Rachel, about the sister who'd always seemed so perfect, so sure of everything. She thought about David, alone at that hospital, drowning in work and guilt. She thought about herself, hiding in her quiet life, too afraid to reach for anything real. That night, she showed up at the hospital at midnight. David was exactly where she knew he'd be, in Rachel's room, reading through medical journals by the dim light of a desk lamp. He looked up when she came in, surprise and something else flickering across his face. "Lily, I talked to Kyle. He said you're not taking care of yourself." "I'm fine. You're not." She set down the bag she'd brought. "I made soup. And there's coffee the way you like it. You didn't have to do that." "I know." They stood there awkwardly, the tension thick between them. Finally, David set down his journal. "I miss you," he said quietly. "Is that horrible to say?" "With Rachel right here, I miss you. What kind of person does that make me?" "Human," Lily said, echoing his words from before. "It makes you human. I keep trying to figure out how this happened. How I went from loving Rachel to having feelings for you. Like maybe if I can understand it, I can fix it. Go back to how things were supposed to be." "Can you fix it?" David looked at her, really looked at her, and shook his head. "No, I don't think I can." Lily moved closer to Rachel's bed, looking down at her sister. "I read somewhere that coma patients can sometimes hear us. If that's true, she knows. She knows everything we've said, everything we've felt. And that makes it even worse, doesn't it?" "I hope she doesn't know," David said. "I hope she's somewhere peaceful, dreaming about her perfect life that we've all ruined." "We didn't ruin it. The accident did, didn't we though? By falling for each other? By being selfish?" Lily didn't have an answer. They stood on opposite sides of Rachel's bed, connected by their love for her and their impossible feelings for each other, trapped in a situation with no good solutions. "I can't stay away," Lily admitted. "I've tried. I moved out, I avoided you, I did everything right. But I can't stop caring about you, and I hate myself for it." "Then we're both terrible people." "Maybe we are." David reached across the bed and took her hand. It felt like coming home and committing a crime at the same time. "What do we do?" he asked. "I don't know. But we can't keep torturing ourselves like this, and we can't abandon Rachel. So we what? Just exist in this limbo forever? Until she wakes up. We focus on her, on finding a way to help her. We put everything else on hold, and can we do that? Put feelings on hold?" Lily squeezed his hand. "We have to try." That night they made an agreement. They'd both stay at the penthouse but keep their distance. They'd coordinate Rachel's care together, but nothing more. They'd be partners in helping her sister, not husband and wife. Not friends. Definitely not anything more. It should have worked. It might have worked. But 2 weeks later, David came home late after a particularly brutal surgery. Lily was still awake, reading on the couch. He looked destroyed, barely holding himself together. Before she could think better of it, she opened her arms. He collapsed into them, and they held each other in the dark living room, both of them crying for everything they'd lost and everything they couldn't have. That's when they heard David's phone ring. The hospital. Rachel's condition had changed again. This time she was waking up. They arrived at the hospital within 15 minutes, both of them barely breathing. The hallway seemed endless as they ran toward Rachel's room. Lily's heart pounded so hard it hurt. This was what they'd been waiting for, praying for. Rachel was waking up. Everything was about to change. The neurologist met them outside the room, and Lily could tell from his expression that this wasn't the miracle they'd imagined. Rachel had regained consciousness, but the damage was severe. She had limited mobility on her left side. Her speech was affected, slow and slurred. Most concerning was the memory loss. She remembered her childhood, her career, getting engaged. But the accident itself, everything after the engagement party, it was all gone. Blank spaces where months should have been. "Can we see her?" David asked, his voice shaking. "She's asking for you, but be prepared. She's confused and scared. Don't overwhelm her with information. Let her adjust slowly." Lily hung back, letting David go in first. Through the window, she watched him approach the bed. Rachel's eyes were open, moving slowly around the room. When she saw David, her face lit up, or tried to. The left side didn't quite move right. "David," Rachel managed, the word coming out thick and difficult. He was at her side immediately, taking her hand, tears streaming down his face. "I'm here. I'm right here." Lily couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Rachel trying to smile, trying to squeeze David's hand. She was awake. After 5 months in darkness, her sister was finally awake. When Lily finally entered, Rachel's eyes found her. Lily? "Hey, Rach?" Lily moved to the other side of the bed, taking her sister's other hand. "Welcome back." Rachel's eyes moved between them, confused. She tried to say something, but couldn't get the words out. Frustrated tears filled her eyes. "It's okay," David said gently. "Take your time. You're doing great." Over the next days, the doctors assessed Rachel's condition. The prognosis was difficult to hear. She'd need months, maybe years of physical therapy. Her speech might improve, but would likely never be completely normal. She'd need help with basic tasks. The architecture career she'd built was over. The independent, vibrant woman Rachel had been was gone, replaced by someone who needed constant care and support. Lily watched her sister struggle to feed herself, to form simple sentences, to remember basic things. Rachel would get frustrated and cry, angry at her own body for betraying her. It was heartbreaking, but worse were the moments when Rachel seemed happy. When she'd see David and smile, calling him my David. When she'd mention wedding plans, not remembering they should have already happened. When she'd look at her bare left hand in confusion, wondering where her engagement ring was. David wore the ring on a chain around his neck now. Lily had seen it when his shirt shifted. He'd never taken it off, just moved it out of sight. The question everyone avoided was obvious. What now? Rachel thought she was still engaged to David. She'd mention the wedding, talk about their future together, and David would smile and change the subject. The doctors had warned that stress or sudden shock could cause setbacks in her recovery. They needed to be careful. Lily's parents pulled her aside one evening. They wanted her to step back, to let Rachel have her life back. The marriage to David could be quietly annulled. Rachel need never know about it. Everything could go back to how it should have been. "She needs him now more than ever," her mother said. "You understand that, don't you?" Lily understood perfectly. She'd always been the backup, the temporary solution. Now that Rachel was awake, Lily could disappear again. That night, she started packing at the penthouse. David found her there, carefully folding clothes into boxes. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago. Moving out." "Rachel's awake. This arrangement is over. We're still legally married. We'll fix that." A quiet annulment, like it never happened. David leaned against the doorframe. "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter. It never did." "It matters to me." Lily stopped packing and looked at him. He looked exhausted, torn apart. "David, Rachel needs you. She thinks you're still her fiancé. She's planning a future with you. I can't stand between that. But I'm not her fiancé anymore. I'm your husband." On paper. A paper we're going to tear up. Is it just paper to you? David moved closer. These months we spent together, the things we talked about, the way we... He stopped. Was it all just temporary to you? It has to be. Rachel is awake. She needs you. What about what I need? The question hung between them. Lily felt tears building but refused to let them fall. You need to do the right thing, she said quietly. We both do. Rachel lost everything in that accident. Her career, her independence, her future. The least we can do is give her back the man she loves. She doesn't remember the last 5 months, Lily. She doesn't remember that we'd been having problems, that we'd been arguing, that maybe we weren't as perfect together as everyone thought. That doesn't matter now. It matters to me. I can't just pretend nothing changed. I can't pretend I don't have feelings for you. You have to. Lily zipped up a box with more force than necessary. Because the alternative is telling Rachel that while she was fighting for her life, we fell in love. How does that help her? How does that do anything but destroy her? David had no answer for that. 2 weeks later, Lily had moved back to her old apartment completely. She'd stopped visiting Rachel, unable to face her sister knowing what she knew. David went to the hospital every day, helping with Rachel's therapy, sitting with her, being who she needed him to be. He'd text Lily sometimes. Simple things. Rachel asked about you today. She's making progress with speech therapy. I miss you. Lily never responded to that last one. One evening, Lily got an unexpected visitor. Rachel's physical therapist helped her to the door, and there was her sister, standing with a walker, her smile lopsided but real. Rach, what are you doing here? Not a need. To talk. Getting Rachel inside and settled took time. The therapist left them alone, and the sisters sat facing each other for the first time since everything had changed. No, Rachel said slowly, each word an effort. Lily's blood went cold. Know what? About you and David, the marriage. How? Rachel smiled sadly. David's brother, Kyle, he thought I should know, said, everyone, was lying. To me. Lily felt like the ground had opened beneath her. Rachel, I'm so sorry. We never meant for any of this to happen. The families forced us and then we just... I'm so sorry. Rachel raised a shaky hand. Stop. Listen. Lily went quiet, her heart breaking. I've been watching. You both. The way you look at each other. The way he talks about you. The way you disappeared when I woke up. Rachel took a breath, the effort visible. That's not duty. That's love. Rachel, no. Yes. Rachel's eyes were wet. I see it. Even through this broken brain, I see it. But you and David were good once. But we had problems. I wanted career, he wanted family. We were trying, but... Rachel struggled with the words. I'm not that person anymore. I'll never be that person. You're still you. No, I'm someone new. Someone who needs help. Dressing. Can't. Work. Can't. Be the woman. He fell. 4. Rachel wiped her eyes clumsily. But you're who he needs, who he loves. I see. It. I can't do this to you, I won't. Lily. Rachel grabbed her hand with surprising strength. You spent your whole life in my shadow being the quiet one, the good one, the one who puts everyone first. She met Lily's eyes. I'm giving you permission to be happy, to have something. That's yours. Lily broke down completely. I don't want to take him from you. You're not. I'm giving him to you because I love him and I love you. And I see that you love each other and holding on. When I should. Let go. That's selfish. They cried together, holding each other, awkwardly, two sisters who'd never been particularly close suddenly understanding each other perfectly. What do I do? Lily whispered. You go. To him, you stop. Hiding, you stop. Feeling guilty. For being alive. And in love. 3 months later, Lily stood in a small garden wearing a simple blue dress. Rachel sat in a wheelchair in the front row, her smile crooked but genuine. David stood at the altar, and when Lily walked toward him, the look on his face made everything they'd been through worth it. This wedding was nothing like the one that had been planned. There was no huge venue, no hundreds of guests. Just close, family and friends who knew the whole complicated story. But it was real. It was chosen. It was theirs. I, Lily Chen, take you, David Park. Rachel dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. It had taken her months to come to peace with this. There were still hard days, still moments of grief for the life she'd lost, but she was building a new life, different from what she'd planned but still meaningful. She'd started teaching architecture to art students, working from home, sharing her knowledge in a new way, and she was learning something she'd never understood before. Sometimes loving someone meant letting them go. As David kissed his bride, really his bride this time, chosen and loved and wanted, Rachel smiled. Her sister had spent her whole life being invisible, being second. Not anymore. Sometimes the stories we plan aren't the ones we're meant to live. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. And sometimes love finds a way even when everything seems impossible. In the end, they were all okay. Different, changed, carrying scars, but okay. And maybe that was enough.